Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who always had faith that the US Under-20s would beat France. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, I should yes and you, but no I did not.
You no-butted me.
Yeah, pretty much. Because there was a moment in this game where I thought this could get ugly very, very quickly. Yeah. In the end, it did not. The United States defeated France in the U20 World Cup in the knockout round, 3-2. Yep. They advanced to play Ecuador in the next round.
In the quarterfinal, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, so that's very exciting.
Also, spoiler alert.
Also, spoiler alert. I mean, you knew what you were getting into when you clicked play on this, right?
One would hope.
Hopefully, yeah. Unless there's an autoplay situation, in which case we apologise. We should do, before we get into the game, we should maybe review our preview.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't on the Total Soccer Show podcast feed. We appeared on Jimmy Conrad's show.
We did.
I've got to say, that was a fun show to be on. Jimmy's a really good host.
He is, because...
If he has a party, I would like to be invited, because he's a good host.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think it's similar to a thing I talked to you about off air about, like, the Top Drawer Soccer show that Travis and I did last week, where I have conflicted feelings about this team, and I could see how they could be a very good team. I could see how it could go very poorly, and I have a hard time sort of deciding which of those I think is going to happen. Yeah. And I still had that kind of conflict heading into that conversation with Jimmy Conrad. So yes, he's a very good host because he was able to kind of pull coherent thoughts out of me at a time when I was feeling a little bit conflicted about this team.
If only I could do the same.
Yeah, you do best.
My prediction on Jimmy's show was that the US would play really well and like have some possession and look good, but ultimately would fall to France. It was the exact opposite. The US honestly played kind of poorly in long stretches and looked kind of rough.
And I know one of us made a prediction about that.
And somehow came away with a 3-2 win.
Yes.
Was that your feeling of what would happen?
Yeah. I believe I said that I felt like if the United States were going to advance, it was going to be because they were defensive and bunkered and then countered and kind of won ugly. Yes.
Are you right, though? Did the US bunker in this game? I'm not sure they did, because they tried to press a few times.
I think they tried to it on occasion, and I think it didn't work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, no, I think it was more so that my anticipation was that they would probably not be quite as aesthetically pleasing as we would have liked if they were going to win. If I think where I settled on was like, but I would be okay with them just kind of going at France and trying things and seeing if maybe something happens. Yeah. And if they lose, they lose. But where I think we all settled was it's supposed to be a development tournament at the end of the day. Yeah. And so even if you lose, but you play a certain style and you kind of get experience playing that style in a knockout round game, then that's to your benefit. I'm not saying that, therefore, this wasn't to the U.S.'s benefit, because obviously advancing in a knockout competition is always an exciting thing.
Makes me feel good.
But it definitely leaves me feeling conflicted again. I'm kind of where I was at the beginning of the day.
Okay, so I think, can we agree that it wasn't necessarily a coherent performance?
Yes.
So you couldn't say the US pressed the whole time successfully. You couldn't say the US sort of had a 4-1-4-1 defensive shape that France really struggled to break down.
No.
Because that did not happen.
You certainly couldn't say that.
French movement was really good. Players were always open. They were pulling the US apart. What they were is 3 really good goals. Like, all the US's goals have great things to talk about in them. Yeah. And some sort of...
I would say 2 very good goals and then one where there's a lot to talk about. But yes, I take your point.
Okay. I think I disagree, but we'll get into it when we get to it. And then some like interesting individual performances where essentially we as an audience learned more about these U20 players, about sort of what they're good at and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think where I am in like my evolving understanding of soccer, which is what we have, because you know, it's an evolving thing.
You're a lifelong learner, Taylor.
I think I've yes, that's what I want to be. And I do mean that because, like, if you'll forgive me for a moment, like, I think watching these U20s, what I'm actively trying to do is not necessarily, like, be excited about them, have a little bit of hype to it, but also see why some of these guys aren't regularly playing for their clubs or haven't made a move abroad or aren't even getting like minutes with their MLS sides.
You mean like in terms of what they need to work on?
Yes. Yeah. And so watching this game, that was part of the thing that I found really fascinating, was seeing like, okay, this player has clearly worked on this, but really needs to work on this. Yeah. And in a way that I think you can't...
I know exactly who you're thinking about, but we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. In a way that like you don't necessarily get to see from senior teams, where it's a little bit faster, things are a little bit more coherent, and also because a lot of times they're playing in a specific system that suits their individual abilities and not their individual vulnerabilities. Okay, you don't quite have that luxury at U20 level. Yeah. So I enjoyed that aspect of this game for sure.
Before we get into the goals, which I think is how we're going to handle this game, right? Because there's 5 goals and it kind of tells a story of the game, and let's just talk about all the specific individual players. I want to sort of address the under-20ness of the under-20 tournament. All right. I really think this game, you could see the emotional swings in both sets of players.
Agreed.
And I would argue, I've picked up this point from Brian Sciaretta that you really need to think about the youth of these players when you watch U20 games, and it can somewhat explain inconsistent performances and the odd things that happen. I think you saw the US team be down on themselves at a certain point and almost giving up and sort of like a whatever and like standing still kind of thing. And you also saw a French team that essentially lost their heads after the US equaliser and got far too aggressive and were giving away lots of silly fouls. And I really think that's interesting because I think that's the type of thing that you don't see as often from full-grown men professional teams because everybody has a better grip on their emotions because they're not teenagers. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not criticising anybody for it. I think it's just part of the landscape of under-20 soccer is that the emotional swings are going to be a little wilder.
Yes.
I remember being a teenager.
Yeah, I think
my swings were wilder than they are now.
Yes.
Right? Now I'm pretty level, but before they were...
Yeah, I'm with you. So I think that's true, and I think it's also that, like, with a lot of these guys, they probably haven't had the, like, social media, whatever, coaching to have that, like, okay, if you're frustrated, you probably don't want to, like, make that very, very abundantly clear, because that's not a great look for you. And
just in Renix, when you score, maybe don't yell words on camera.
I mean, that happens all the time. No, but I genuinely mean more so, like, when you don't get the ball that you wanted to, don't stop and be, like, screaming at the person. It makes it clear. Like, and I think we saw...
You don't see that at professional level so much, right? Because you know that there's a new job to do as soon as the ball's being turned
you
over.
see it with some people, and then we talk about it because it's an outlier. But I think like that was what was so distressing to me once the United States went down in the second half was how everybody just looked mad at each other. And that's not a thing I'm used to seeing from a U.S. senior national team and also from a youth national team. That I think we tend to see the U.S. as much more of a, I don't mean this in like a negative way, but like a more like rah-rah, like let's go, we got to fight, we got to try to go for it. And that was one thing that was a criticism in 2017 of the men's senior national team was that some of that fight was gone. Some of that we always work harder than everybody else was gone. And so on the day today when it was like, oh, the ball went out of bounds and they all just like hung their heads and were mad at each other, it didn't feel like that fight was there, which again is why that turnaround was so surprising to me.
Am I right in thinking that I remember you specifically mentioning that De La Fuente sort of played a pass that was his fault because it was an off-target pass, and then kind of gesticulated to all his teammates like, as if it was their fault. And that's the type of thing you're talking about,
exactly.
Right?
To the extent that like they kind of stopped for a moment to almost try to like figure out whose fault it was as France still had the ball and were attacking. And again, that's that youth of...
And worth remembering, De La Fuente is, I think, the youngest player on this team. He's like 17 or so.
I believe he is. I believe both he and David Ochoa are eligible to play for the U20s next time around.
There we go. Yeah,
David Ochoa, who did not play in this game.
He did not.
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about the goals, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, let's get into it. Because very much against the run of play,
yes,
I can make the case for this, the US scored first with a Sebastian Soto goal in the roughly 25th minute or so. There are 3 chances for France directly preceding this. Yes. And I think that's worth mentioning. This it came at a time when the US were getting ripped apart. And then suddenly... Savagna wins the ball off Diaby trying to Cruyff turn. Ledesma dribbles upfield, slips in Sebastian Soto, and it's 1-0 US. Absolutely against the run of play.
Absolutely against the run of play. But indicative of what the United States was trying to do, which I think was combine quickly through like sequences that I feel like they had definitely worked on. And we'll get to the later goals, but a lot of those sequences seem to be direct balls down the channel, not long balls over the top, but like down, like wide to kind of try to pull
almost
France
balls
out.
On the floor, especially to like advanced fullbacks, right? Yeah.
But with this goal, when Savagna wins it and then Ledesma picks it up, it to me feels very clear that like Soto knows where that run is going to be, where Ledesma wants to take that ball, and knows how to sort of measure his run so that he is like playing the way Ledesma wants him to play, so that he can be an on goal. And so I feel like there, just because it kind of was so against the run of play, it stands out that much more as being not so much a like complete on-the-fly improvisation of like, I guess he's going to pass it here. Oh, but that seemed to work out. It felt much more like, okay, we've won the ball, now we pass it again, now we score a goal.
Yes, and I think if you watch Soto...
I hope my snaps were audible.
They were just like Thanos'. If you watch Soto, who really, he stays with, I've forgotten the name of the player, there's France number 6. I think he's like a defensive midfielder guy who ends up tracking him. And Soto times the acceleration of his run to be as far forward as possible, but still onside when Ledesma slips this ball between Zagadou, France's number 5, and the number 6.
Yeah.
It is perfectly timed.
I
think that is a trait of Soto's game that I think you saw in previous games, and you definitely saw at least twice in this game.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you bring it up that way, because that's what I mean when I say that. To me, this wasn't a sort of like on the fly, here's what's going to, like, I guess this worked out, because it's Ledesma under pressure, and you can kind of see him looking around for options. He gets past one French player, and as he gets past that player, he's playing the ball simultaneously. And I feel like that was a sort of like, okay, I don't have these other options, therefore this is the only thing on, so I'm going to like stride past this one player, then play it through. Soto knows when that ball is going to be played, hence why he's at full speed but still on side. That just felt like a strong relationship and a strong connection that ends in a goal.
Do you think France maybe didn't expect this skinny Ledesma kid to suddenly have that burst of pace that he did?
I'm not sure they even knew who Ledesma was.
Because he's only appeared once in the tournament so far. He has a profile in the US because he's like gone to the Netherlands and we're all excited about him. But I'm not sure France knew that maybe he had that bit of zip acceleration through the middle.
Well, they know now.
They do know now. They do know now. Great moment for Richie Ledesma.
It was. And it was, I think, a good finish from Soto. I had a moment where I was concerned that maybe he'd taken a little bit too long, had thought about it too long.
Yeah, he almost lets the ball get away from him. I thought he was in danger of someone poking the ball away from him. Yeah,
and then he does the kind of fall down shot at the same time.
Yeah.
But still manages to put it far side netting.
2 goals where he shoots and ends up on his butt.
Yeah, that's fine. As long as it ends up in the net.
I guess it's a skill.
I mean, the one time he doesn't do that is when he doesn't dribble far enough wide and the goalkeeper just collects it off his foot.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Maybe falling over is his secret to scoring.
It's his secret trick.
It could be. Could be.
All right, 20 minutes later, maybe less than that, right? 41st minute. Goury for France.
I'm sure that's it, yeah.
Has the ball in the back of the net.
He does.
There's a lot to learn about the US from this goal as well, because it starts with a US press. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it
a successful press because we forced France to go long.
That's what's confusing about it, is that it is successful in bits and pieces. Like, I think Timothy Weah is slow to press. You can hear the coaching staff yelling at him.
Timmy.
Yeah, to get there faster. Yeah. And it doesn't quite work, but
like
it's
a South
still...
Park episode.
Well, I think he yells it to himself. But if Timmy were screaming at himself to be slightly faster, then maybe. But he ends up still forcing the guy back, so that's like the positive thing, and it's pulled the U.S. forward. But I think also because the United States sends so many players in to try to like put this press on, that when that ball is cleared, it's what they want, but then it also potentially puts them into a spot of vulnerability, which is what ends up happening.
So what happens is Kamara, number 4, he's almost by his own corner flag, is forced to just clear it long by a good US press eventually. Yeah, but I agree with you. Confusing because it was a little sloppy, but worked.
Yep.
Chris Gloucester receives this ball essentially right about the halfway line, right on the touchline.
I think he's 10 yards on France's side of the half. That stands out only because they had so many numbers committed so far forward.
Right, and he meets it, left-footed, tries like a mid-air volley, left-footed, and he's going for Chris Richards, right? But the problem is Chris Richards is like 15 yards ahead of him and in field, and Chris Richards is our centre-back. So I think we pressed so high up, Chris Richards has essentially been pulled out of position, right?
Yes.
And then I think you spotted this, that the problem is that as Gloucester plays it to Richards is already thinking about getting back to centre-back where he's supposed to be, and so he's not in a position to receive the ball correctly. I'm not sure that's anyone's fault. It's more just like an example of the US press being so aggressive that it sort of didn't work for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not necessarily anybody's fault, but it's still the case that it's not an ideal situation to find yourself in, that your center back is now trying to get back into position, sort of. It's not like he's like on his horse sprinting back at full speed, but he's moving back in that general direction, probably because he expects Gloucester to bring that ball down. But it's also the case that I'm assuming he's gone forward because he's trying to man mark whomever it is who drops in, and that's why Richards is out of position.
Is it Fofana? Is that who he's with?
It may be, but it's also the case that then Keita doesn't slide over nearly as much as he probably needs to. Sergino Dest, who's the other American player back, is still pretty far wide.
So you've just described one centre back and one full back, because that's all that's left.
Yes,
because Gloucester's all the way up over the halfway line. Richards is even farther beyond him. That's leaving yourself exposed.
Well, again, yes, it is. It's not as bad if they've kind of slid over to cover, but
formed like a central pair.
Exactly, but they have not done that, and I think it's again because there's a lack of familiarity in the team, and they don't quite know. Like, okay, I'm supposed to slide over. This is a program thing. Richards steps out. I think on the occasion, Richards just spots a person who's wide open in the middle who could have been an outlet, so he steps to that. Keita stays where he is because he's worried about his defensive responsibilities, and you don't have that awareness to, okay, now we all slide over because this is a thing that we've all worked on a billion times, and so it's second nature.
And so what happens is, I think it's Fofana, wins the header because Richards has backed off of him, gets the ball to Diaby, who's able to then get the ball down, have a bit of like a couple of touches, and then he's got Guri running outside of him. And Abubakar Keita is essentially 1 versus 2, right? Because he's got Diaby to deal with and he's got Guri to deal with on the outside. And it's a tough spot to be in. And I think we talked about this in terms of what would VVD do? What would Virgil van Dijk do?
Yeah.
And he would split the difference between the two players because we're talking about him as like the supreme defender at the moment. So therefore, the correct thing to do is what Virgil would do.
Yeah.
And Abubakar Keita does like a very bad version of that, essentially. So he's in a very tough spot, but you kind of see a flaw in his game that like maybe he could have done better.
See, I think he does it okay. I think it's that his spatial awareness is the problem.
Yeah.
Because essentially what he's doing is he's facing towards like Guri, but running backwards so that he's, I think, trying to force the run inside. And he thinks...
From Diaby.
Yeah, and I think he's done that, but I think he thinks they're more central than they are, and I think he thinks they're closer to the goal than they are. So when like Keita basically turns, I think he thinks, okay, I've got Diaby now I can kind of switch like and defend him one-on-one and then get closer and closer and poke that ball away. And he doesn't realize that he really hasn't done that. He hasn't gotten close enough to the goal.
And he hasn't closed off the angle to
exactly.
Guri. That's the main thing, right? He's given Diaby the pass, and Diaby's like, I'll take it.
And so basically, like Keita, in the span of like 3 strides, has to turn around and then turn back around. And then once you've done that, you are completely out of position, and then he really has to try to scramble. In the end, I think he ends up...
Does he slide straight into Brady Scott's nether region?
He does, after the ball's already in the back of the net as well. Yeah.
How about Brady Scott on this goal? Because as Guri has slipped through, Guri's like basically centre right, right? So he's running at Brady Scott. Brady Scott comes out and, in my opinion, comes too far outside the frame of his goal, like too far to Brady Scott's left, and almost gives Guri the far post to aim at.
I think it's because Guri takes a touch as he's entering the 18, and I think Brady Scott gambles on it's going to be a heavy touch. He's going to hurt his angle a little bit, so I'll slide over and like defend against what I think that angle is going to be.
Yeah.
The difference is that Guri has taken a very good touch that allows him to kind of shoot as soon as he wants to or whenever he wants to, but because Brady Scott has already committed to sort of sliding over towards that near post, it definitely opens up a ton of space at the back post.
So he gambled and lost, essentially. Yes. So maybe it's not too bad. It's more that he's once you're one-on-one with a striker, you kind of have to make some sort of gamble to try and force something to happen. So maybe it's not so bad.
No, and that's exactly what it is for me, is that it's him trying to kind of evaluate the situation on the fly and like basically put all of his chips on, okay, it's going to be a heavier touch. And in the end, he loses, and that's where maybe he evaluates and learns a little bit more. But it's still him, I think, doing mostly the right stuff. I'm sure goalkeepers out there, goalkeeping experts would disagree on some of the footwork and some of the decisions overall. Sure. But, I think once you're in a breakaway situation, you do the best you can.
Okay, so then we get to half-time, and frankly, we're grateful to get to half-time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of France pressure for the final few minutes, and I personally was very relieved. I think I saw on the US players' faces as well, very relieved to get to half-time. Speaking of half-time, good time for ad breaks.
I would agree.
So today's show is sponsored by Policy Genius.
That's right. There's a widely held belief that procrastination is a bad thing, but life isn't so black and white. Sometimes procrastination can work in your favor.
That's good news for the two of us.
Yeah, like when you're maybe game planning about how to play against a team, and then you just kind of do it at the last minute. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you kind of throw some things out in the second half, and they end up working out.
Or maybe you're researching for your Women's World Cup previews. Like sometimes you maybe leave it a little late, but it just motivates you to do the research faster. Or, for example, if you need life insurance, but you've been putting that off, congratulations. You've managed to procrastinate long enough for technology to make it easy. The technology's caught up to your procrastination.
There we are. Policy Genius is the easy way to shop for insurance online. In just 2 minutes, you can compare quotes from top insurers to find your best price.
And Policy Genius doesn't just make life insurance easy. They can also help you find the right home insurance, auto insurance, and disability insurance. All kinds of the insurance.
Yes. Home insurance, important. Like if you're going to buy a home, it turns out. I didn't know that until I started to buy the house. And then I was like, oh, we need insurance. I better do that real fast. So I kind of had to do it on the fly, trusting the insurance I already had. But Policy Genius, if you have to do it on the fly, if you've procrastinated and you're trying to do it quickly, they allow you to do it very, very quickly, and they allow you to do it easily and get the best possible quote possible.
So when you finally decide that you need life insurance, but you've been busy doing literally anything else, check out Policy Genius. It's the easy way to compare all the top insurers and find the best value for you.
That's right. Nobody wants to shop for life insurance. It's not the most pleasing of things to do, but that's why they made it very easy so you can do it and get on with your day, get on on with watching U20 World Cup and potentially previewing the women's national teams.
And the URL to go to is policygenius.com. That's policygenius.com. The link will be in the show notes if somehow you can't spell those two words.
There we are. So thank you to Policy Genius for sponsoring today's episode. Now let's get back to talking about the USA's 3-2 victory over France.
Yeah.
We've gotten to halftime. Coming out of halftime, we think there's a few adjustments from the United States. Nothing too major.
So no subs, but I think we noticed, or you noticed that Ledesma was going to come deeper in the second half and Savagna was going to go even deeper. So first half, just to set it up, even though it's like a 4-3-3 listed, it was really Savagna and Pamukal were almost like two defensive mids with Richie Ledesma just ahead of them, right? But say Savagna wouldn't drop between the centre-backs or anything like that. He starts doing that in the second half, I think, to receive the ball and kind of slow it down and maybe try and establish some possession.
Yes.
And Ledesma coming even deeper to get the ball and establish some possession.
Yeah, I think a problem there, though, is that like Savagna had an okay game, but I do think, as we talked about earlier, you can see vulnerabilities in certain players or some things that they need to improve.
Just get into it, yeah.
And I don't think this is a Savagna issue alone. I think Chris Durkin has it too, but it's getting open. And I don't think either...
To receive the pass from the centre-backs.
I don't think either one of them, even when they do get open, I don't think there's an intent to like, okay, I need to get myself in a space where I can turn immediately and play that ball forward, or I can get it, and now I've kind of created an overload on one side or pulled France out of position. I think it's a bit more kind of like what a lot of players would do, which is just like, okay, I'm going to run left and see if I'm open. Okay, I'm not open. Now I'm going to run right and see if I'm open.
And I'm going to just roughly be in a like deep central area and just jog left and right until I'm open.
Exactly. And so I think...
You need to really fake it out, right? You need to like pretend you're running one way, throw your marker off and open an angle, then go the other way.
Exactly.
And then suddenly you're... I mean, that's what, say, Busquets does, who's one of the best at it.
Exactly. But it's also that like they've practiced that, Barcelona with Busquets, so that they know like, okay, he knows to go here, the ball comes there, and now we know how to build off of that. Whereas I think with Savagna, if you don't want to get caught in position and you don't want to cough it up, but you're not great at knowing exactly where to be and how to occupy that space, what you end up doing is dropping deeper and deeper and deeper because it's the safer ball. It's always going to be safer. But that means that now you have either like moved between the center backs or you've moved to one side of the center back. And if you're France, then one of their midfielders has vacated space. We can just stay where we are.
Yeah.
And so what I kept seeing was Savagna get the ball, turn back around, play it back to the centre backs.
I would also say he's not massively helped by the fact that I think Abubakar Keita is a lot slower playing the pass than, say, Chris Richards is. Chris Richards is pretty fast, right? Pretty sharp, zips it in. I think Abubakar Keita, it takes him a few seconds to take that touch and make that pass.
Yeah, jumping ahead past when France get their go-ahead goal. There is one in the 62nd minute where Keita like very clearly is going to pass to Savagna and takes about 5 more touches before he does, and that ball gets intercepted and it ends in a shooting chance.
And then you're not telegraphing it to France, you're sending them an email with an attachment that shows a diagram.
Here's what I'm going to do.
Where the pass is going. So that means by the time Savagna receives the ball...
It takes a very long time to write that email.
He's easily under pressure, right? Savagna's already under pressure because France have seen it coming. We haven't taken them by surprise.
Exactly.
The other element tactically of what the US are doing is because Savagna's deep, Ledesma's deep, there's definitely that plan of get the fullbacks high, right? You see a lot of Dest high and wide right. You see a lot of Chris Gloucester high and wide left. And I think a lot of the plan is the winger, like it's Weah at this point, will sort of maybe come a little deeper, receive the ball, and then Gloucester will be beyond him, and then he plays him through. I think the US try that a couple of times. It doesn't come off. But then Gloucester's already high up the field. And the second goal, I think, the France go-ahead goal, comes from Gloucester being really, really high up the field after a failed attempt to find him while he's in a really sort of wide left attacking position.
Yes, and to double down on that for a moment, I think it is also the case that this is a thing the United States has worked on. And I feel like there's a big difference between what you've done in training and applying it in a game when you're playing against a first-team opponent.
Yeah.
And so you could even hear like a couple times in the second half, Tab Ramos being like, no, yes. Like, because you're right, Timothy Weah.
In terms of when to go and when to stay.
Yeah, because like Timothy Weah, when you're right, he would drop a little bit deeper to allow that overlap. But what started to happen in the second half was the wingers would do that, but they would also drop in more centrally, which pulled the defender with them, and then there was space for Chris Gloucester or Sergino Dest to run onto because somebody's vacated that space. In this sequence, that doesn't really happen, and so I think France are kind of comfortable where they are, but it looks like it's an inviting ball. I think it's Ledesma who ends up playing the long ball.
Yeah, so after it doesn't work the first time, Gloucester's still high. Possession gets rotated back to Ledesma, who's very deep. Like we said, he's getting the ball from deep, and he tries to hit a kind of Steven Gerrard $1 million ball cross field down the left to Gloucester.
It's a 99-cent store ball in the end.
And it was a 99-cent store ball. Yeah, in the wind kind of caught it and it fell short.
You might be being generous by blaming the wind.
Except for the wind. Yeah.
Yes. And then this is like exactly what the United States do not want. Like they would rather lose the ball in France's half and France's like defensive third for sure.
And then you could counter press a little bit or something.
But if you are going to lose it there, that's okay as long as you don't have numbers committed forward. But here, Chris Gloucester is very far forward, and I think France are keenly aware of that. And maybe also, I hope not, but maybe also keenly aware that maybe Abubakar Keita is not great in 1v1 situations, or maybe doesn't have the pace. And I do think that's why you end up having Diaby kind of in a 1v1 situation, is because maybe they put their fast, very creative player up against a defender who's not quite as fast.
Yep. So I don't remember exactly how this happens, but there's definitely Ledesma goes for Gloucester. The ball is way short. France have possession, and they very quickly switch it down that right wing where there's no Chris Gloucester anymore because he's gone attacking.
I think it's intercepted, pass central, pass back out wide to the right channel again. So it's kind of like
to Diaby?
Yeah, exactly.
And you get, so Diaby, like a ball played in reasonably quickly, right? It's Diaby versus Keita out on the right wing. And there's no good way of saying this. Diaby roasts Keita.
Yes.
I've seen it on Twitter, a lot of people saying, it's not his fault, you shouldn't leave him one-on-one, which is kind of true, but also it's your job when you're the left centre-back, if you're exposed and you're against the right winger, you've got to either win the ball or at least slow him down.
Or foul.
Yeah. And Keita
I mean that sincerely. Yeah. If you're going to foul, like this referee was not handing out cards. There are multiple moments when there should have been yellows given, especially later on in the game, and they were not. Going away from goal towards the touchline, even if you're the last defender, I don't know if that's going to be a red card, but I also think that there was enough cover back that at worst it's going to be a yellow. But I think once Keita finds himself in that, and there is that moment, you and I have both had it when it's like, oh no, like I am not fast enough to handle this person. And that's when you step across and you make it look like you're trying to play the ball, but you got to foul. And
mine was, do you remember for Richmond City, this is like 2 or 3 years back, we played ex-Rams, which is a lot of ex-VCU players.
Yes.
And I believe it was Kwaku.
Yes.
It was just suddenly, I was isolated 1v1 against him, and I was just like, I hope my angles are good.
Yes. Kwaku, who I think retired like 15 years ago from professional soccer, probably many more than that, and yet could still roast most players at this point. Yes.
Yeah.
And so you have that moment.
So I just had a very specific flashback because it was essentially the same position that Keita was in.
And in that moment, when you're beaten, you kind of have to be like, well, I'm throwing in the towel. Here comes the jersey pull. Here comes a little bit of a clip. And again, you can put that in the category of like things you probably learn to do in that moment when you have a couple more years of experience. Because I'm not saying I would know to do that in that moment. I don't have the experience as a defender. Certainly don't have it at this level. But I think if Abubakar Keita plays another season of professional soccer, I believe he commits that foul there.
Here's the thing, though. Diaby has played in Ligue 1, 25 times?
For 10 starts, I think,
for PSG. And he has the savvy to know, I can fake like I'm going to just bring this ball down, stop, and square up to Keita, and then sort of decide on what I'm going to do. But I can fake like I'm going to do that. Then you force Keita to stop, and once he stops, that's when I go.
Yep.
That's essentially what Diaby does, right? He briefly stops, then he goes. And the stop is so small, it's enough to like signal to Keita I'm stopping, but it's not enough to actually slow Diaby down.
No, he
manages to stop and have momentum at the same time.
It's a move that you would expect from Kylian Mbappe. If you didn't see it, it is the exact type of thing Kylian Mbappe does.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying that France has 2 players who can do that. Maybe 3 or 4, actually, when it comes down to it. Yes, and so then it's in on goal. I think it's a toe poke that goes off the post, rebounds, put in the back of the net. So Gino Dest is there. I can't really fault him for he goes in for the slide tackle.
No, as soon as he sees it, he throws his body. He maybe could have got more of his body behind it as opposed to just his legs stretched out and his body behind it.
Yeah.
Away from it. But so maybe, but you're just reacting in the moment the very best you can do.
You are. Right? I also think, I may be wrong because we didn't break this down frame by frame, but I think Dest actually gets to the ball first. I think he slides in and gets the ball.
He gets a touch, yeah.
But the problem is that he slides through and gets the ball, so it's already kind of left his foot when it makes contact with Aliou. Thank you. So then Aliou has 100% force behind it. And Dest is a little bit more reactionary at that point because he's already made the contact. So I think in terms of physics, I think Aliou is always going to win, exemplified by the fact that the ball ends up at the goal.
Yep. So 2-1 France. Things are looking bad.
Yep.
Tab Ramos makes some changes.
He does.
And they end up really, really working, which is not I like Tab Ramos as a coach. He's not someone who I think of in a Pochettino-y, I'm going to fix everything with a couple smart tactical subs and it'll solve all the problems kind of guy, right? He brings on Ulises Yanez for Conrad De La Fuente, right? Kind of a like-for-like, winger for winger.
Yes, and we were okay with that one because I think De La Fuente, as we said, looked frustrated on occasion, didn't seem like he was combining as well in the second half, seemed like he was pretty fatigued.
Yep, and then we also know Yanez is maybe not fully fixed. He hasn't been able to play many proper games in the last 6 months or so, so maybe he can't go 90, so bringing him in for like 30 minutes, is that 63rd minute or so they come in?
You got it exactly.
It's as if we talked about it earlier. Bringing him in for 30 minutes or so seems maybe perfect because he was really, really effective, right? The other guy he brings in, I believe, is Justin Rennicks. Is it Rennicks for Ledesma?
It is.
And I want to say Ledesma's the same thing, where he was a bit of an injury worry coming in. So maybe Ledesma's fit enough to go 60, but not fit enough to go 90.
Yeah. It has the familiar symptoms of pre-planned substitutions.
Yeah.
Which, if you'll forgive me, again, it's a little bit wandering, but this is where I get confused with Tab Ramos. That, is he a very good coach at this level, or is he sort of he's just doing what he does? Because if you have pre-planned substitutions, the goal has happened in between when you would have made that plan. You've gone down 2-1 in between when you would have made that decision.
How do you know it's pre-planned? Because of those injury type things?
Well, no, just what you were saying, that this feels like substitutions that were sort of you can probably play 60 minutes at the fitness you're at, then we'll sub you out. So give us 60 good minutes, then we'll get kind of replacements in. So then it's almost it's not him necessarily adjusting to the game. So, it's more of we're doing what we were going to do.
Actually, this is my whole Tab theory, which I don't think I've ever, Tavare theory, I don't think I've ever shared on the Total Soccer Show. I think he's very good at coaching a group of young players and getting them all to buy in, getting them to trust him and like him. And things like telling Ledesma, maybe you got 60 minutes, and telling Ulises Yanez, all right, you can probably only go 30, so we'll play you 30. There's a lot of trust is built there and a lot of sensible decisions in terms of not overexerting players and maybe hurting Ledesma or hurting Yanez by being too much. But it's almost as if Tab Ramos places that type of managing the player to sort of not push them to the extreme ahead of winning games.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's almost like he's looking out for the players, which I think is maybe what you should do with under 20s, more than doing everything possible to win. And I think I'm okay with it because it's a player first approach as opposed to a let's win games first approach.
That makes sense, but it still makes me confused that the way, if we saw this with coaches who we weren't familiar with, teams we weren't familiar with, and we saw goal in the 55th, a double substitution in the 63rd, that feels this goal has happened. They've gone down 2-1. Hey, substitutions, come on over. We're going to change it up. We got to change the tactics. And then suddenly they found a way to win. And that narrative is wow, that coach is very good. They made adjustments.
Yeah. And Yanez is involved in the equalizer and Rennick scores the winner.
But what I'm saying is, if it's pre-planned substitutions that were always going to happen there, regardless of the scoreline, which is maybe the case.
But it's not definitely the case.
It's not definitely the case, but I guess that's where I get confused. Is so then it's not necessarily on-the-fly adjustments to make things happen. It's sort of well, no, we were always going to do that, and then it worked out. And that's where I get confused.
It's a confusing game.
I
still don't think the US played particularly well, and yet we beat France 3-2.
I mean, if you went back to where we were, before, maybe a couple of minutes before the United States scored the equalizer, we were both saying the body language, the way they were playing, the failure to combine
is the moment, right?
in meaningful ways.
This is when Savagna's walking and Tim Weah looks a little sort of disconnected.
Yeah.
And we were very concerned that this was then going to turn into a bit of a France rout. I think, actually, more than the tactical substitutions, the thing that changes this game is the cooling break.
Because I agree, and I want to talk about that. But I wanted to add that what we ended up saying was this doesn't feel like a game the United States is going to pull a goal back in, except for a brilliant individual moment. And so it's amazing to me that what actually does it is coming out of the water break, a really, really nice passing sequence. And I do think you threw this out there at the time, and I was no, that cannot just be it. I think just getting a water break made a huge difference that they needed, because we didn't see much coaching. We didn't see, maybe it was, and then we just didn't see it.
The camera was on the French players more, so by the time, it was on the French players first, so by the time it cut across to the US players, Ramos wasn't saying anything to them and people were starting to walk away back on the field.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe there was a moment of Ramos really talking to them and we just wasn't on camera.
It could be, but again, that's a very, very quick turnaround. Look at France. They spent that entire water break getting instructions and tactical adjustments. There's no way that Tab Ramos was
Turns out it wasn't good.
Hey guys, just do everything totally differently. We'll be fine. Okay, good luck. Get some water. So I think maybe it was just maybe that is Tab Ramos again, knowing the team, knowing the situation,
cool
knowing
off,
like,
freshen
just
up.
get a break, mentally reset. You don't need me yelling a bunch of stuff at you. You know what you got to do. Go out there and do it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that literally what happens after the water break is France have a free kick. I think that's how it restarts. They look for a long direct ball that goes all the way back to the United States' goal near the corner flag.
Dest picks it up.
Straight from that, the United States passes right back down and scores. And it's just sort of like, okay,
right.
Water breaks are important.
So this is the second Sebastian Soto goal.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about this goal then.
Let's
So
do
it
it.
starts with Dest.
Mm-hmm.
They essentially pass it across the back four to Keita.
Mm-hmm.
And then Boubacar Keita hits the ball, I think the US has wanted for most of the game. He finds Chris Gloucester wide left in an attacking position. This is a line-breaking pass.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's not central, it ends up down the wing. It breaks through breaks through the forward line and the midfield line and gets Gloucester not in behind the defence, but like in an advanced position down that left wing.
Yes.
Fair?
And like, if you'll forgive me for an extended analogy, like, you know in the video games when you like, you're playing a video game and you like beat that one part, but then you still haven't beaten the level, and then you beat the next part and like, oh, I made it to that level, and then like it takes you a while to get back to that. That's what this was for me with the US, of like, oh, we're trying to play that like ball, that direct line splitting ball out into the channel, but it hasn't quite worked. On occasion it kind of did, but then even once we've done that, then it doesn't necessarily go anywhere. And this was the one time when they like beat the level all the way. But like now the next step is to find somebody who can then carry that attack on, and that's exactly what happens. Gloucester finds Yanez.
And Yanez puts, I've forgotten who the defender is, but he puts a nice little move. Just
it doesn't matter because he did nothing.
It's a shimmy this way and that way, going to sort of open a little space for himself, get it to Timothy Weah. And then Tim Weah has that moment of magic that we've been talking about. He did it against Qatar where he nutmegged the guy and scored.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And he does it here where he spots that Soto is in behind most of the French defence. Very quick outside of the right foot, slight bend pass to put Soto in on goal. This is a wonderful spot from Tim Weah. Really smart to spot it. Really technically good to be able to maneuver that ball through those lines.
Yes. Yeah. And we also talked, I think, with Jimmy Conrad about like how Timothy Weah has a little bit of that name recognition. And I do wonder if France were maybe looking like, oh no, it's the one guy we don't want to have the ball in a shooting situation. And Jan-Axel Zagadou is an accomplished defender.
Borussia Dortmund starter.
Exactly. And yet he completely loses Sebastian Soto because I think he's preoccupied with what's Timothy Weah going to do.
Oh, that's what's going on.
A strange thing because I don't think we've ever really said that about an American going at an established defense before. But I do, maybe at this level, that is kind of the cachet Timothy Weah has. Also worth noting that some of his teammates are on that French team because he's at PSG. And I do wonder if maybe they also have told their teammates like, hey, he's good. He can shoot. Don't let him do this. Don't let him do that. And so that entire French team gets a little bit preoccupied with him.
And the mistake Zagadou makes, who was kind of the standout performer in this game, I want to say up until this point. Is he sort of backs off a little bit while the rest of the defence takes a step forward. So essentially there's no defensive line. Sebastian Soto, we talked about his timing of getting in behind. He spots this, right? So he manages to stay like behind all those other defenders, but he's doing like a little stutter step thing to stay level with Zagadou so that he is in behind even though Zagadou's level with him. Yeah? And Tim Weah spots it, plays him through. Does Soto end up on his butt again?
He does.
As he strikes this?
That's not necessarily his fault, though, because this might be, I'm realizing, a great clip to show young defenders of what not to do, because it's Zagadou being deeper than the rest of his line. You spotted that one. Then he's ball watching, so he's unaware of the man near him. Then he tries to get over to it, recognizes that's not on, and kind of tries to do like the disguised... just a little bit of a shirt tug as Sebastian Soto shooting, but he does
That's why he ends up on his butt, and it's not like
hard.
A weird technique thing. Zagadou gets a little piece of him.
Yes, and so there's a chance that even if Soto doesn't finish this and it goes wide, then like you still maybe run the risk of conceding a penalty if you're Zagadou. So not great from him, pretty good from Soto, very good from the US.
And as I mentioned like many minutes ago, I think Zagadou he's the French captain. I think he kind of loses his head after this.
Agreed.
He goes charging around. He goes in late on Yanez. I don't know if it's before or after this goal. I think it's after this, right?
It's after this,
yeah. He steps into him and I think really hits Yanez in the chest kind of, and he's holding his chest. All kinds of like weird fouls from Zagadou, and that spreads throughout the French team, I think.
Yeah, I think
Matt
this
conceding
the
equalizer, basically.
Yeah, and this is where the United States does, I think, get into France's head a little bit because they're now buzzing. They feel like they've got the momentum. They're up for it, and they start to really, really hassle hustle France every time they have the ball, and that leads to, as it will if you're kind of playing a high-intensity pressure system, a couple little kicks, a couple little knocks, and I think France respond to that by getting annoyed. You see some kickouts. You see Zagadou, just body check Yanez.
Who kicks someone really, really late?
I think that's Kamara. I think it's Kamara kicks Renix, who's like kind of hassling him. It's in the corner. It's near the very, very end of the game. And there's just a little teeny tiny kick out after the ball is gone. Pamakal got one of those in
that's the one
US's
I was thinking
defense.
Of. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's I think in between the two US goals he gets one because it partially explains why Paxton Pamakal, he gets kicked and then in the ensuing 2 or 3 minutes that lead up to the goal is all over the place.
He wins
putting
a couple
in challenges.
Balls, right?
Yes.
All right, I think it's time to talk about the winning goal because it is. So UC Yanez has the ball, plays like a leading pass for Pamakal, but it's two leading.
Yep.
So it ends up creating a 50-50. Paxton Pamakal is the hero of the day because he wins that 50-50.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things he's great at. He really goes into a tackle in a way that it's not even like violent or aggressive. It's more like he just makes sure that he comes out with the ball.
Yeah.
It's determined, but it's also like weirdly technically good. He doesn't pop loose. He tends to come out with the ball.
Yeah.
And that's what happens here. This is what changes the game.
You can't go halfway into a tackle and be like, well, if I get beat, I'll be in a position to defend. But if I win, if you go halfway, you get beat is basically how it's going to be. And he goes all in, but because he's made that commitment, he's made the commitment to make a smart tackle as opposed to a reckless, I'm just going to go on 100% and see what happens.
So Pamakal wins that ball. I think he just lays it off or gives it to Tim Weah. Weah makes the very sort of Tim Weah decision. No, I'm just going to shoot from here from the top of the box, and it's blocked, right?
Well, he's already had the beautiful through ball. Why not just go for one?
I think I talked about this with Jimmy. I love Tim Weah's connecting play when he's receives and plays 1-2s and does that kind of stuff. I don't love it so much when he's just shooting from distance.
I love the idea that the United States is so competitive at this level that Timothy Weah, competitive with each other, that Timothy Weah has that shot and it's blocked and it falls to Sergino Dest, and his thought is no, I'll show you how it's done. Because he then hits the ball off of that. I think maybe takes a touch and then hits it, but he crushes that ball from about 25 yards out.
Perfect strike, right? It's got that really good sort of, it's off the ground, but not too far off the ground, and it's not rising too much, right? It's really driven. It's got spin, but it's not bending. It's really going inside that far corner.
Yes, and then maybe there's a hint of sun in Lafont's eyes, maybe.
I'm sure he'd love to say that.
Yes, I'm sure he would, but this is the one way back when you said 3 very good goals. This is the one where I'm a little bit mixed because it's a great hit from Dest.
Yeah.
It still should have been saved. At the very least, it should have been punched clear.
Well, it was saved, but then
dropped.
Parried to the side. Yes. Right? And credit to Justin Rennick,
100%.
Because I'm pretty sure as Dest hits the shot, Rennick starts crashing.
He does.
He essentially gambled on Lafont parrying it in a way that would create an opportunity. And he only just gets there first because Lafont, he's made the mistake. I mean, Lafont's a really highly rated goalkeeper, right? He's immediately up and ready to make the next save, but Rennick is just there a split second first.
There's no hesitation.
And I think, doesn't he he kind of hits it quite hard, but it's like a hard chip over Lafont, who's getting his hands in the way. It is a great finish from Justin Rennick.
He puts the laces through it for sure.
Yes.
But it's because he's not doing that skipping, the kind of skip thing that you'll see people do when the shot's coming. Is it going to go in? Is it going to go in? Okay, now I'll react to it. He reacts to it and gets there, puts it in the net. 3-2 USA.
3-2 USA. We see the game out. There's one more Soto chance.
Yep.
There's McKenzie comes on and plays extra centre-back. Doesn't look entirely sharp. I think he's still not fully fit.
Agreed.
Right? Okay, but we saw it through. There's one player I'd like to just finish talking about. Sergino Dest. So that shot obviously is probably the highlight of his game. He had a really good game defensively.
Yes, he did.
In terms of, so we've seen in the past,
I would hate to play against him.
He is not good in the air if you play a diagonal and you're expecting a taller left winger for him to challenge that person. Dest is still going to have to work on that side of his game. Someone running at him, I think every time he came out with the ball, he is impossible to go past because he's so tenacious and smart about when to make that tackle, and then he bursts away with the ball.
It was very similar to the kind of breakout game I would say he had against Mexico when he just kind of defended Lena's point for point. It was a lot of that in this.
It did feel like that, right?
Where it was hassling. If you're the person on the ball, it's you're annoyed because he's kind of all over you, and there's a little bit of contact here and a little bit of contact there. It's never enough for a foul, but it's enough to put you off and not make you 100% focused on keeping that ball. So then there's another little poke, and then eventually he wins that ball. Heading into this game, I had some concerns about him starting at right back. I do not have those for the next round. My other concerns I had about Abubakar Keita's distribution and some of his decision making, those questions remain, and I think maybe Travis Clark and I will get to the bottom of what we think will happen in the USA's next game against Ecuador.
And I think Boubacar Keita, again, like, I don't want to go too deep on this because I know we've gone long, but it's a guy that's only played, 2, maybe 3, I think 2 professional games. So there's just a lot for him to learn still. And this is all part of the learning process. And some of the things he hasn't learned have been exposed. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good defender going forward.
It does not. Yeah. But it certainly means that if he wants to be like a candidate for Greg Berhalter's system, which is dependent on center backs who can play the ball.
We're a few years from that, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's – but this is what I'm saying when we go back to it with the U20s. That's a thing that now we know he needs to work on. So that's a thing where we can really pay attention to, like, is his distribution and decision-making improving? And if it is, then maybe we'll go back to it. But he's one who right now I think of as like, okay, I know what you need to do to get better.
We'll get to watch his progress here in Richmond for the rest of the season, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And Daryl can ask him probing questions about why he makes decisions. There we go.
I might do that.
And I will shirk that responsibility wholeheartedly.
We shall see. Mm-hmm. So as you said, the quarterfinal, the under-20 quarterfinal, which I think is how far the US got last time.
It is.
Is against Ecuador. What's the date on that? Is it Saturday?
Saturday, 11:30 a.m., I believe.
Saturday, 11:30 a.m. And you'll have a preview on the Top Draw Soccer Show, our sister show, this Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and
this week.
Verbally committing us to part of that will be previewing what Ecuador do and what they will try to do against the United States so we can have a good idea of that heading into the game.
Okay.
Now that I've said it, it has to happen.
And then, if people don't know, we have a sister show that we produce for Top Draw Soccer, the website. It's called The Top Draw Soccer Show. You can find it separately from the Top Draw Soccer Show on iTunes, wherever you get your podcast.
Wherever you get your podcast.
iTunes is about to be disappeared, right? It's Apple Podcasts now.
Is that what it is? All right. That's good to know. This conversation about the U20s is about to disappear so that we can move on to talking about the senior men's national team.
Okay.
But before we do that, we should talk about today's sponsor, Grip 6 Belts.
Yes, Grip 6 Belts. I am, of course, wearing mine right now.
Of course.
I don't wear them just for the ads. I just happen to be wearing them when we do the ads. Grip 6 belt is a special kind of belt. It doesn't look like one of your normal ugly belts.
It doesn't.
It's got no holes. It hasn't got one of those pokey things. I don't know the names of belt pieces.
Holes and flaps? That's
holes and flaps, yeah. It doesn't have holes and flaps.
We've done this before, you know.
I know, and I never remember. Maybe I don't want to remember. I want to move forward into the future with I'm going to say, futuristic-looking Grip 6 belt.
All right.
I could see it in a sci-fi film where
I can see it too.
We've evolved beyond buckles.
I also could see it on like I did look to see if Pochettino and not Guardiola, but Pochettino, when he stood up during the Champions League final, it felt like a belt that he might be wearing. It's fashionable, but it's low impact. You don't necessarily notice it, but when you do notice it, you're like, "Ooh, that's stylish and sleek."
Yeah,
that felt like a thing he would be wearing. He was not, which maybe explains why they lost.
that is the problem.
I'm pretty sure.
So we've talked about the various belts from Grip 6. We found a new sort of subcategory on the website. We found the flag section. There's a flag section where the Grip 6 buckle essentially is a flag.
It is.
So you can show some patriotism while you wear a Grip 6 belt.
They've got various colors for the American flag, so you could wear that one during the Gold Cup, for example, the Women's World Cup, so you could be appropriately pro-USA without having to go full-on jersey and eagle head and stuff like that.
What do you mean by various colors? So I'm assuming there's red, white, and blue.
I think there's there's not. There's a gunmetal one, I think there's a black and white one, and then I think there's a red tinted one.
Oh, the color of the buckle, and then the flag is on top of it.
Yes.
Got it. There's also a Canada one, right? If you're a big Christine Sinclair fan.
There's Texas, there's Wyoming if you want to represent individual players.
State.
You've got a couple states in there, California as well.
Yes, if you believe in states as nation states, then you should get one of those.
Perfect.
I think a lot of Texans do.
Yeah, there you go. And we usually talk about it in relation to ourselves because we both wear them. I'm wearing mine right now as well. But we should know that there are men's, there are women's, there are belts for children on there as well. So it's not just belts for dudes. It's belts for all folk.
Not just dudes. They should put that on their website.
They probably should.
It's also not always full price because you can go to grip6.com, GRIP, the number 6.com /TSS, grip6.com/TSS, and there you will find discounts for Total Soccer Show listeners of, I believe, 20 to 33%.
I believe you are correct. So that you can go to, one more time, grip6.com/TSS to get your discounts there. Thank you very much to Grip6 for sponsoring today's episode. Should we talk senior men's national team now?
Yes. So there's a game against Jamaica Wednesday night. 7 p.m. listed kickoff time on Fox Sports 1. It's Jamaica, then Venezuela, then it's the Gold Cup. But this roster is very confusing, right?
It is.
It's not the Gold Cup roster.
It is not.
It's a 29-man roster made up of mostly players who are on the Gold Cup preliminary squad, plus Jackson Ewell.
Yes.
Minus Christian Pulisic and Tyler Adams. I'd like to start there. Pulisic will join the squad, I read, on June 6th. Adams will join the squad on June 11th. I'm still struggling with... There's got to be a good reason. I don't quite understand why these guys got a week off after the Bundesliga before joining the US national team.
So why does that bother you?
I think I've just never seen it before. Normally players will go, they'll finish their club season, and if there's an international thing happening, they just go right into the national team camp, and then they just keep rolling and go into the tournament, and then you get your break. When your tournament's over, that's when your summer starts.
Yeah, but is this like Old Man Grove? Are we starting to see this? Like kids these days taking breaks?
Well, it's mostly because I've never seen it before. Like, I've never seen it with a US team before. I've never seen it with any team before. Of like a break before you... It's like a mini break that they're on, like a Bridget Jones-style mini break. I think before they actually get into camp and get fit again and get ready to go.
First off, I don't get that reference. Second of all...
Bridget Jones was always after a mini break. She wanted to go on a mini break.
I gotcha. Okay. But also, I think it's because, for me at least, like there's been so many confusing little things because there's been this like hybrid U23 and senior camp that happened before the Gold Cup
just ended, right?
Camp even happened. Yeah, then you had like the preliminary roster, but then you have, like, as you said, Jackson Ewell just being thrown in. Yeah. And so it has felt a little bit like, well, lots of players are just being added in random places and different people are getting different experiences at different times. So sure, maybe you're just like, yeah, Tyler Adams, like move mid-season, dealing with an injury. So yeah, sure, you get some time off.
He's just back from an injury, right?
And Christian Pulisic, I don't know, you're moving clubs. It's been a traumatic year as well. You got to figure out if Chelsea are not going to be able to sign players. So maybe he's on the case of that and they gave him some time off to figure that out.
So I guess I just got to accept that this is happening.
Yeah.
And that the games,
as opposed to what, boicotting forever?
I mean, just complaining about it for 25 minutes on the Total Soccer Show. I could fill your ears with that. I could filibuster. But the weird thing is, with this team that we're going to see against Jamaica, it's not really going to be the Gold Cup team, right? It's also, from what I've read from Berhalter quotes, there was a press conference this morning, essentially, what did he say? Most of the Gold Cup roster is set, but some players will be playing for their spots in this game.
Yes.
So I think we're going to see, and I think you agree with me, that we're going to see a sort of not first choice 11 from this 29-man roster. We're going to see maybe a weird, some first choice players and some players that like, hey, here's your shot.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with
Alexander
that.
Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see... you're just cracking yourself up over there today. Yes, I would agree. I think we'll see some more like proven players in certain positions.
Yeah.
To maybe like balance it out. But overall, I think we see a lot of bubble going on.
So shall we try and see if we can pick a sort of 11, like what we'd like to see plus what we think Berhalter is doing, starting 11 from this roster to play against Jamaica. And I think maybe as we go through it, we'll talk about sort of who's on the bubble, who's playing for their spot. I think what you do in practice also counts a lot for whether you make the Gold Cup roster or not. But then you've also got to get on the field at some point because there are at least a handful of guys who've never made a national team debut, right? So there's that as well.
There is.
Do you want to start from the very, very back?
Sure.
The guy that wears gloves?
Yeah. In goal, we've got three options there. We've got Zach Steffen, Sean Johnson, Tyler Miller. I'm guessing we're going to see Zach Steffen, but I would be okay with seeing Sean Johnson just because maybe get him some minutes, see how he does with the ball at his feet.
Can we assume, I think Steffen and Johnson pretty much are making the Gold Cup roster anyway. So again, if we were going bubble only, we would say Tyler Miller's starting. But I think if you're going to put out a team with some strength and some experience to it and someone who's played for Berhalter before, I think Zach Steffen starts.
I think maybe after this Gold Cup, I will be more confident making statements like that because I think we'll finally know kind of who is definitely in Berhalter's good graces or who he favors because...
I mean, he started Steffen for most of his national team games and he played for him at Columbus.
Oh, yeah, that's not the one that I'm confused, like, have question marks about. It's actually Johnson. Because we do have also on the provisional roster, I think Brad Guzan, Ethan Horvath.
Yeah, so they're on the 40-man Gold Cup preliminary roster, but not in this camp or on this roster to play in this game.
So so what I'm saying is I think there's a chance that maybe we get Tyler Miller got some reps in practice. Sean Johnson starts this game. Maybe one of them plays in the Venezuela game, and then they're both gone. And in come Brad Guzan and Ethan Horvath, and that's your three Gold Cup goalkeepers.
Here's the problem: is I've already written Steffen on my piece of paper. So can we say that it's Steffen starting in goal?
Sure, we can say that. We can say that. But I
brought a pen instead of a pencil.
I will add the note that I still would not be surprised if it was Sean Johnson starting. But if we are going to go with like a core spine, maybe that does start with Zach Steffen. So then the question becomes center backs.
So and the shape we're going with is the classic Berhalter formation that we've seen so far, which is on paper a 4-3-3 and on the screen graphic and the way we're going to select it, a 4-3-3. When defending, it's like a compact 4-4-2. When we get past the halfway line, the right back joins the one defensive midfielder, and it's a 3-2-4-1.
It is indeed. All right, so 3-2-4-1. But we'll go with like a more
Let's go to 4-3-3.
4-3-3 to break down.
That'll be on the screen.
I said center backs, but let's go wherever you want in the defense. Where would you like to start in the defense?
I think I'd like to go the easy one first,
Sure.
and I think it's right back because Yedlin's having surgery. He's out. Tyler Adams is not joining up just yet. Nick Lima, I think, is the only right back on the roster.
I believe you are correct.
Yeah, because we know there's just room for Adams to come and join him, right?
Yep.
So Nick Lima's starting this game.
Yep.
Unless something wild happens, I think Nick Lima's starting this game.
I believe you are correct, my friend.
Okay.
So then we have multiple center back options.
Yeah. This is a bubble situation, right?
Yes.
This is who makes the roster, who doesn't.
And I think we have it that way. Like when you and I kind of sat down and did our, like, who do we think is definitely in there, who do we think is maybe in there, and then who's on the bubble. We had, I believe, Matt Miazga and Aaron Long as our two like lockdown for sure center backs that will be in there.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Berhalter likes both of them, right? Long's captain the team.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with Omar Gonzalez, Tim Ream, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and Walker Zimmerman.
So here's what I think. I think there's maybe one guy that's already in and knows the system, and one guy that's on the bubble.
Yep.
Right? So who's that guy that's already in? Is it Miazga or is it Long?
I mean, Long has been the captain for this team before, but maybe I'm going to say it's Matt Miazga. Why not?
All right, let's just agree on that because we could go round and round otherwise. Okay, so Matt Miazga.
But I think it's also because I have him partnering Cameron Carter-Vickers for this game.
Oh, you've already decided?
Yes.
Okay, so CCV is definitely sort of a bubble guy for this. I'd say Zimmerman is the same, so maybe he comes in later because he has less international experience, as does Vickers. Guys like Omar Gonzalez, we know what they're about. Greg Berhalter knows what they're about. I don't think there's anything to be gained from Omar Gonzalez playing against Jamaica.
No.
I personally don't think there's anything to be gained from Omar Gonzalez playing in the Gold Cup either.
No.
But Berhalter may feel differently.
I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, over to left back's interesting.
It's going to be Omar Gonzalez starting, by the way.
Do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I know that I can't bring myself to say that, like on paper, but I feel like there's a decent chance that yes.
Okay, to left back. Okay, it could be Daniel Lovitz.
This is a head scratcher for us.
Daniel Lovitz has done it before, right? For Greg Berhalter, where he's played left back, and then there's that thing where when we go over the halfway line, the left back becomes left centre back in a back three. Tim Ream is possibly an option when the final roster is announced. I think he has a good chance of making it because he can do both of those. Aaron Long is maybe a possibility. The other left back is Anthony Robinson, and I'm fascinated by this because as far as I'm concerned, he can't do that job of playing left centre back because he's more of a left back that's essentially an overlapping fullback who becomes an attacking winger. Yeah. So I think he's only there if we do a different sort of style where we don't do this back three. So I don't know who starts this game then. Maybe it's Lovitz again, because again, he doesn't have that much international experience, right? So maybe it's Lovitz, and we've got Lima and Lovitz like we did in Greg Berhalter's very first game.
I mean,
there's my argument.
That could well be. I would not mind seeing Anthony Robinson because I wouldn't mind seeing him with a few more like proven players who have kind of experience doing this and see if he...
Not in a Dave Sarakin system, but in a Berhalter system.
Yes, exactly. Because I would just like to see if he definitely can or cannot do this. If he can't, like, do that role of like slide inside, be a kind of a third center back.
I'm going to tell you now, he can't. Because he doesn't play to his strengths. Because you're asking him to not go forward at all. And I think that's just asking him to not be Anthony Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I would still like to see if he could do that. Like, that's kind of where I am with it. Is like, I know you feel very strongly about that. Yeah. I feel like it's possible. And I wouldn't be surprised if Greg Berhalter wanted to give it a go because it is an experimental game before the Gold Cup. That said, I also wouldn't be surprised if it were somebody like Tim Ream or Daniel Lovitz. So
who are we going to put on that piece of paper?
I actually had Tim Ream in there because that feels like a spot where he could potentially thrive, and maybe also if Berhalter is kind of trying to evaluate his many different center back options, maybe he just wants to make sure that Tim Ream is up for the occasion.
Should we say Ream/Lovitz?
Yeah,
because in the end, I think it's a weird thing where because if it is the left back who slides into left centre back, it's just a not very exciting position. Because the right back thing is so intricate and exciting, the sacrifices the left back thing gets very dull. And so you get a player who doesn't go forward. So Ream or Lovitz could be filling that role.
All right.
Yeah?
There we go.
Okay. And maybe like late in the game, if we accept my supposition that Robinson is more of an attacking left back, if there's a change in system, then maybe Robinson could come in, get 30 minutes for Berhalter as a more attacking left back late in the game.
There we go.
Okay, that's a possibility.
We may see that. We shall see.
All right, in the number 6 role, the exciting option would be to get Jackson Ewell to do it.
Yeah.
Right? To start Jackson Ewell there, because he has got this beautiful range of passing that we've seen when he plays for San Jose. I think it's Bradley or Trapp to start there, right? Because you go with something a bit more experienced.
My guess would be it's Bradley and then maybe Trapp against Venezuela or vice versa, and Jackson Ewell gets some minutes in one of the games.
Okay, so we'll just pencil Bradley in?
Yeah, that works for me.
We'll pen Bradley in?
Yeah.
Let's hope Jamaica don't pen Bradley in.
And then moving ahead, if we're going to go with the kind of like I have it as like a 4-1-4-1, but yeah, the two midfielders ahead of who we think will be Michael Bradley.
It's sort of either 2 8s or 2 10s.
Yes,
it's 2 8/10s.
Yes, and there are several different options. Some of whom are in this roster, some of whom are not in this roster.
Pulisic will be one of these when he's back, I think.
Yes, but Pulisic, as we know, will not be there for the game against Jamaica. So you remove him from the equation. I have a feeling that Weston McKennie is. We have him as like our guaranteed, definitely going to be on the Gold Cup squad. So if you're thinking of this as like bubble players, I'm not sure he gets that many minutes or even starts.
Yeah.
Again, he may well. Maybe it ends up being Berhalter playing his strongest possible team. But I think you're more likely to see, at least in my opinion, somebody who's like done it before. I think this was a point that you made. Like somebody who's done it before but isn't necessarily going to be a starter. And then maybe somebody who's new to the equation, which is my way of saying I would very much like to see Dwayne Holmes give it some minutes
so
here.
This is a big thing, right? Dwayne Holmes has finally been called up for the US national team. And if you've seen him for Derby, he hits some beautiful through balls. He also is pretty good at like making some defensive plays. He looks like a guy who could really contribute. So should we say, at least in terms of what we want to see Dwayne Holmes start?
Yes.
Because we want to get a good look at him.
Yeah, we do. I'm also like kind of impressed by, as you work this out with this 29-player roster and sort of the gaps that we've identified, it all makes a lot of sense because I just like ticked off who are the maybe possible 4 players or possible players who could play this role. There are 4 of them. So it does make sense that you could do like 2 in this game, 2 in the next game, and then Weston McKennie eventually takes over because I don't have him in those 4 players.
And Christian Pulisic comes out from the outside and eventually takes a roster spot, right?
Also that too.
It's what, 5 guys playing for...
It's if you add Pulisic and McKennie, it's 6 players playing for 2 spots, basically. So
2
4
spots?
Yeah,
4 spots total.
So 2 have to lose out. So yes, I think then you're looking at maybe you put Sebastian Leggett in there to evaluate his fitness.
Yeah, I heard he was an injury concern that he might not even be able to go for this game.
Yeah.
So can we rule him out just in case he's not fully fit?
Sure. Which
just to make our lives easier.
That's fine with me. Which then leaves us with either Christian Roldan or Georgi Mihailovic, and that feels like a Christian Roldan start to me.
I think it's Christian Roldan. I think Christian Roldan understands the system even better than someone like McKennie, who's only played it once and not that successfully. Him and Jordan Morris had all that confusion, remember? So there's an argument that McKennie needs reps, but maybe he'll get the Venezuela game. And if you haven't seen the Gold Cup draw, we open against Guyana.
Yep.
So we open with an easier game, and then it gets tougher with it's Panama and then Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not sure in which order, but the easier games first, right? So McKennie can build up maybe.
The way you read the group to me was Panama, Trinidad, Guyana, but if it's Guyana first, then I have no idea. Yeah. It's all very confusing.
So we're going to say Christian Roldan.
I think we are, because also like Georgi Mihailovic, while we're both excited about him and we've enjoyed what we've seen from him for the most part for the U.S. national team, I also think if you are going to start Dwayne Holmes, which we definitely want Greg Berhalter to do, Dwayne Holmes and Georgi Mihailovic, that might be a little bit too much like change there versus Christian Roldan. I feel like can kind of help shepherd along Dwayne Holmes if the situation requires.
And it's worth reminding people that the Gold Cup roster, Greg Berhalter has to make a decision by Wednesday midnight.
Yeah.
Right? So basically after this game, he's got to do the press conference and then probably some paperwork to send off the roster to CONCACAF. So what I'm saying is if you're going to decide on Dwayne Holmes, this is the only game to play him in because by Venezuela, it's too late to make the decision whether he's in the Gold Cup roster or not.
All right, here's a really difficult question that I'm going to put to you on the fly, and good luck.
Yeah.
If Dwayne Holmes does not play tomorrow, if we don't see him starting, if he doesn't get any minutes tomorrow, does that make you feel more confident that he makes the Gold Cup or less confident? As in, has he already made it? We don't need to see him?
Confident. Okay. You don't want to name a player to a roster who's never made his international debut.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
He might look great in training, but could fall apart on the international stage.
All right. So
you also don't know if he can go out on the field and follow Berhalter's instructions and be part of that team plan.
Yeah.
Right?
Very good point. Okay, cool. All right. Answered. Much more readily and easily than I thought it would be.
Yep.
All right, so where are we now?
We've got our 4 and our 3.
Okay.
We need our 2 wingers and our centre forward to start this game.
This is strangely one of the spots that we have a lot of question marks around,
Yep.
or like just the attack in general, because we're unsure about like who the definite 2 other center backs will be. The third string goalie, there's some question marks. The other left back, but here I have like we're not sure. Is there a second striker? Who are your other 3 wide attackers for the purposes of this, of like the Gold Cup roster and maybe this game? So there's lots of question marks here, and there seem to be a lot of options that could negate some of those question marks.
Here's what's really interesting. In previous games, we have seen Corey Baird on the right and say Paul Arriola on the left, right? Corey Baird is in the preliminary roster. He doesn't make this 29-man roster, which suggests he's kind of on the out. And honestly, even though he followed instructions well, and I think he had 1 assist in the first ever Berhalter game, he has not impressed, right? He hasn't impressed fans. He hasn't impressed media. I'm going to assume that Berhalter is at least concerned enough that maybe he can't do it. So I think he's on the outs, the fact that he's not on this 29-man roster. Jonathan Lewis, on the preliminary roster, has played before, has been coming off the bench a lot for Berhalter, but making an impact. He's got 2 assists off the bench, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But it was weird that he was added late. It was originally a 28-man squad, and then we just added Jonathan Lewis kind of a day later. I don't understand why that is. I don't know if maybe he was carrying a knock or maybe he almost wasn't included. So that makes him bubbly to me. Makes him on the bubble. Am I using that correctly?
It makes him bubbly?
It's an American phrase to me. I don't quite understand it, but I assume on the bubble means like if you're inside the bubble, you're like on the roster. If you're on the bubble, it's like you're on top of it trying to penetrate through.
I have no idea.
Yeah?
But sure, that sounds
It is
good.
a phrase that people use, right?
I'm assuming I always put it as like between one thing and the other, the bubble has risen up. So if you're like not safely on one side or the other, then you're on top of the bubble. That's the way I see it. As like in the Gold Cup squad, not in the Gold Cup squad, and then there's a bubble separating the two, and you're sitting on top of the bubble, undecided as to where you're going to go.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I imagine the 23 players, or say there's like 17 players who are already definitely on the roster. I imagine them all sitting inside an actual bubble, and everybody else trying to pierce it, like the dome in The Simpsons.
All right.
I guess they're trying to get out, right? So
I think once you pop the bubble, though, to get in, doesn't it?
Oh, no, you've got to it's permeable. It's permeable once you get a pass.
All right.
Yeah. Which is to say...
Your bubble situation confuses me.
So basically what I'm saying is I don't think Berhalter's fully happy with his wingers in the past. Jordan Morris played on the wing and essentially looked kind of confused about what the job was. So I think the wing spots are up for grabs. And the name that everybody should be looking at is Tyler Boyd.
Yep.
Tyler Boyd, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have him, I think, as a...
Not Terrence Boyd, Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, as a right winger... for the U.S. For Ankara Gaju last season, he was kind of swapping wings, but he is right-footed, but plays on the left.
We watched footage
to
double check that he's right-footed. Yeah.
And then when he plays on the right, he stays wide and either looks to like beat defenders with pace and then get in behind, or to cross the ball from that right channel. That seems like what Greg Berhalter would want from Tyler Boyd. So I think it makes sense to start Tyler Boyd on the right wing, similar to Dwayne Holmes as well. That if you're not going to play him, do you really want Tyler Boyd getting his international debut in the Gold Cup? I don't know. So why not give it to him here?
Do you want to do a quick Tyler Boyd primer, or as Jim Brochard would prefer, primer? Just if people aren't familiar, he did a one-time switch. Tyler Boyd did a one-time switch from New Zealand to the United States not so long ago, right? Which really suggests that he's possibly already got a Gold Cup spot since he was persuaded to do that.
Yep.
If you look at his appearances for New Zealand, he only has like 8. That's not because New Zealand didn't want him. It's because he kind of realised or decided, actually, I'd rather play for the US. So he stopped accepting New Zealand call-ups before he played in like an official qualifier where he would have been tied to them forever. So what do we know about him? Fast. Very, very, very fast. Got a few tricks, right? Some nice cuts and cutbacks. And not afraid of cutting inside and shooting. So he's a guy that we can potentially be super excited about.
We can. I'm a little more excited about him from the way that you just explained it, because to be honest, my understanding of Tyler Boyd, not saying it's correct, but just kind of the way it's formed in my head, is that he wanted to play for the United States, and when he thought it was an option, that's when he aggressively pursued that one-time switch. It has never occurred to me that he was being recruited by U.S. Soccer, simply because that's not really been the case for the U.S. Soccer in the past. They haven't.
Because we've not been that good at it.
Especially in very recent history. So I think that's how I understood it. If it is that U.S. Soccer sort of identified him, got excited about him, I'm sure there have been many, many blog posts and message board comments about Tyler Boyd. Yeah. Maybe it goes that way. That does make me a bit more excited. That said, I'm already very excited to see him.
And I just want to see this Berhalter system with some real danger on the wings.
Yep.
And so I think I've only seen highlights, and obviously highlights are the high points. I think that's what we'll get from Tyler Boyd. I've got him starting on the right wing in my team here.
All right, and I have Jonathan Amon starting on the other side.
Ooh, okay, so this goes away from the experience, right? Like in terms of balancing it out, we're just going fully two guys who've never played for Berhalter before.
Right.
Yeah?
Wait, has Amon not played for him before?
I don't think so. He's been he was played under Saracen. He wasn't called into a team under Berhalter.
All right. Yeah. So maybe you get them both some experience. Although probably more likely is that it's Paul Arriola on one side
instead of one of them, right? But maybe one of them subs in later.
Yes.
I also honestly I wouldn't be surprised if say Dwayne Holmes doesn't start and just comes in late. I'd just much prefer to see him start.
Yeah, I think we're doing a combination of what we would like to see with a little bit of what we think might happen. And that's where maybe it is Arriola, Amon subs in. Maybe it's Jordan Morris and Tyler Boyd subs in, or vice versa. But I think we
want someone who knows the system, and that's not Jordan Morris on recent evidence.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much. Then does Jordan Morris start up top?
No.
Okay.
Because there are too many other, because Morris has been a winger for Seattle.
A firm no.
He's been a winger for Seattle this year, right? The more pure centre forwards are Josie Altidore, Giassi Zardes, Josh Sargent.
Do you feel weird that you just said the more pure strikers is Giassi Zardes? Because that's kind of confusing to me still.
I mean, his favourite position is definitely centre forward. He'll do wing as a favour to Jurgen Klinsmann. Whereas Morris kind of thrives sometimes playing wide. You know what I'm saying? Zardes, you cannot say thrives playing wide. He's definitely always thinking, correctly, I should be playing centre forward instead, right?
Yes.
So the actual centre forwards are Altidore, Zardes, Sargent. My guess is a lot of US fans would prefer to see Sargent because they just want to see Sargent play. His form towards the end of the season for Bremen was not great. Josie Altidore...
I think in order to have form, you have to play.
Yes, well, yeah. The more rounded, experienced, better centre forward right now is Josie Altidore. It's Jasmir Valmy Altidore.
Just looking out the window for things to be flying in that people have thrown at you.
For some reason, people don't want to hear it, but he's our best striker.
Yep.
Josie Altidore is our best striker.
Yep.
He hasn't played for Berhalter yet. I want him to start at centre forward.
I think that's fair. I think he will. Because you also want to give him that kind of match to get used to it a little bit, to get back into it, but also against a Jamaica team that are going to be figuring things out themselves.
Yep.
Yeah, you go with Josie Altidore, you let him dominate, and I think he probably will. I think he will look very strong. And then maybe we see Josh Sargent in the second half or getting some minutes later on. I
think that's possible.
And I think most of that is because I do think strangely of those strikers, even though I think we probably end up seeing all three of them make it between Sargent, Zardes, and Altidore.
Yeah.
If I had to bet, I would say the one who is most safely on there is Giassi Zardes. And I think
because of his pre-existing Berhalter
relationship?
Exactly.
I think Berhalter knows what he can get out of him, knows that he can execute if given the instructions and can do what's asked. Some people would disagree, but I think we saw him, even if it didn't necessarily lead to like tons of shooting opportunities, I think he did the workmanlike job that he needed to do. And so I think he's probably in there, and I think it comes down to Altidore and Sargent getting minutes in this game just to maybe make Greg Berhalter feel a little bit better before he submits that roster.
And I feel weirdly confident that Altidore in a Berhalter system will thrive. Because remember, like, we used to get frustrated with Altidore, especially under Klinsmann. We would kind of see him just standing up front. And I think maybe it's that there were no good instructions. Whereas with Berhalter, the centre forward has a lot of instructions. It's about sort of moving around, sometimes coming deep, like trading places with other players, like to open up space for them. I think if he's asked to do it, Altidore's very capable of doing it. And then he's just a good finisher. When he's in on goal, Josie Altidore's a really good finisher. So I think he's going to thrive in this system.
I haven't seen him in like consistent games long enough to say that for sure, because like with the end of the season, Champions League, and then the start of the Women's World Cup, I have not watched nearly as much Toronto as I have in probably years past.
I saw his first 4 or 5 games back after injury, and he scored a bunch of goals.
Right.
Put it that way, yeah.
Okay, that'll work. That'll work. But I also think it's the kind of the beauty of Berhalter's system is that a lot of times with Altidore, the issue has been if he's up top by himself in a 4-2-3-1, that doesn't always give him the support he needs around him.
Yeah.
If you put him like partnering somebody, then you lose a lot of your kind of strength in the midfield, and it tends to be then the whole team kind of drops back to fill those gaps. With this system where you have kind of people sliding around, I think it does suit him because it ends up being he still has wide players to play off of and combine with, but he still has those 2 number 10s now.
Yes, to combine with, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so he has more support around him to put him in better positions, and I think that benefits him overall.
It's worth remembering he's also very good at combinations. I can see like Boyd plays it into Altidore, Altidore receives it, maybe gives him like one of those little Billy Baldwin drag back, reverse heel flicks for Boyd to run onto. I can really see all that happening. Yeah. All right, should we talk about our opponents?
Sure.
Any other roster players you want to talk about, like who you maybe want to see get in there? Sorry, I changed track mid-sentence.
Not necessarily. It's just I want to know about Sebastian Leget's fitness. That's one that we'll probably need to evaluate. I really have concerns about left back, which was probably already clear in the way we talked about it previously.
Yeah. We sort of disagree on what's going to happen, right?
It's not even necessarily that. It's just that like I think Anthony Robinson still has a lot of potential, and I think could be a very good left back for the United States. But if Berhalter is going to kind of like continue to do this system, as you said, I don't think it naturally fits Anthony Robinson.
It doesn't.
And so then you're kind of potentially excluding a very good player from most of your games unless you're not playing the system. And then right now, like as we've already said, the options are what? Lovitz, Ream, Aaron Long. Aaron Long, then you're pulling out of potentially starting at center back because he's looked very good there. That, to me, feels like the weakest position right now for the United States. And I would like to see how Greg Berhalter addresses that and who he puts in there and what that person does to either make me feel a little bit better or make me feel a little bit worse.
One tangent, bit of a thought experiment. Do you remember what Berhalter did with Yedlin? So Yedlin can't play that right-back Tyler Adams, Nick Lima style where you go into central midfield, but he had Yedlin essentially play right wing.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe He does the same with Robinson at some point. We could maybe see Robinson just as a straight-up left winger. I think that'd be more to his strengths if you're going to find a role for him within the national team, and that left-back role is not a role where you get forward. So that's possible too.
It is. It feels like we don't, and maybe with Yedlin, even with what you've just said, we still kind of don't necessarily have answers for those two. And really, like, I think you have to do that because, yes, there's a chance that if we're playing like a standard back four and they're not going to kind of move around, then you have those two. But is that worth burning roster spots on DeAndre Yedlin and Anthony Robinson so that when we do that, you can have those two, but if we're doing something else, then you don't have those two?
Yeah, they've almost got to be on there as extra wingers as well, right?
Yeah.
So maybe some wingers lose out.
So, yeah,
right?
So I guess that's where I am, is that it feels like there are some boxes that I don't quite know how to check off, and I would like to have some answers coming probably out of the Gold Cup as a fair request.
It's also, we've only had 4 Berhalter games, right? And some of the opponents early on, the first 2 were not so hot, right? It was a sort of bad Panama and Costa Rica teams. So, after the Gold Cup, we'll know a lot more. I mean, Trinidad and the actual Panama team will be proper opponents, and then eventually, hopefully, we play like a Canada, Mexico, something like that.
I mean, shots fired at Guyana, but sure. So now should we talk Jamaica?
Yes, let's talk Jamaica. So their roster, names maybe we should know from the Jamaica roster. Let's just do like who people should look out for. And I think it has to start with Leon Bailey.
I agree.
Yeah. So Bayer Leverkusen winger, so he's playing the Bundesliga. Really dangerous Bayer Leverkusen winger. The guy can dribble, he can go outside, he can shoot, he can do pretty much a lot of things that we should be worried about. I think he'll play on the right wing, so that means that Ream, Lovitz, maybe Robinson spot is going to have something to contend with.
Yes. Yeah. I worry about how the U.S. deals with Leon Bailey. I worry about how the United States deals with Kamar Lawrence. When he gets to attacking, he's rather fast, as has been talked about much this season. So if he's making runs out, if you've got him and Leon Bailey combining or on overloading one side or splitting,
I never know where Lawrence plays. Does he play right back or left back or both?
I mean, I think he can do wherever he wants to be. That's going to be my guess. So I think it will be a very like direct and like attacking, but like fast attacking Jamaica team. So how the United States,
Maddox has a burst as well.
Yeah. So how the U.S. kind of deals with that while trying to implement their game plan without leaving themselves too vulnerable. I think those are all things to watch for. I think between the sticks, you've got Andre Blake. Would be the expectation if they start their strongest possible team. And Andre Blake, I've been hyped about since I previewed Philly like 4 seasons ago, I think it was, or 3 seasons ago, and he continues to reward that hype with justified solid performances and going up against a like experimental attack potentially. Like if he's on his game, could definitely frustrate and could potentially like really have some players making their debuts not have that good of debuts
because he'll be saving their shots.
Yeah.
So the basic tactical thing is the US will possess the ball, right? Greg Berhalter, positional play. It's about moving the ball around side to side, players rotating positions and eventually unsettling or unbalancing the opposition in some way so that you can then exploit the gap. But if you have the ball for a long time, you're in danger of being counterattacked, right? If you're being counterattacked by Leon Bailey, suddenly you're in trouble.
Yes.
So that's the basic setup of the game. I think that's all I have to say on it. Is there anything else you want to add before we close down?
Nope, that's about it.
All right, then I will say, once again, the game is Wednesday night. 7 p.m. is the listed kickoff time. It's going to be later than that, honestly, on Fox Sports 1 and Unimas. We'll be back late Wednesday night to review that game.
Joe Zhao. Just got to get that name in there because I think we said literally every other name on the roster except for Joe Zhao.
Let's talk Joe Zhao for a second then, right? So he's been playing, 2 Bundesliga? No one saw this call-up coming.
No.
Well, especially no one saw his name on the preliminary roster come in, and he's on there. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some minutes in this game.
I mean, I wouldn't either, but I'm also not quite sure. I'm not sure if this is like more me being out of the loop or just it hasn't been made clear, but I'm not even sure why Joe Zhao is in the squad. As like harsh as that sounds. Yeah, but like...
And he wasn't happy with his wing option, so he's kind of trying everything. That's why like Jonathan Amon, Tyler Boyd's been called up, and Joe Zhao as well. We'll see what he can do.
There we are.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's the best way to put it is just I'm... Like, it's nothing against Joe Zhao. It's just, again, I like to think of us as like, okay, like we've got all these exciting players and Christian Pulisic and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, yeah, we're going to go like Duisburg in Bundesliga 2. Let's see what happens. He made 7 starts.
So he is right-footed, can play on the right wing or the left wing. I think he's more likely to play on the right wing. And I don't know. I mean, I'm weirdly excited to see him because we've seen so little of him recently.
Is he another one who, if we don't see, then we should probably go ahead and say, yeah, he's probably not making that squad?
I mean, yes, there's a lot of players who you would put in that category, right?
I mean, limited substitutions as well. I think you've only got, six? Yeah. So I'm not sure we're going to get to see all of the people we've discussed, since we've discussed about 40 people.
Yeah, but
roughly.
we've discussed the bubble players.
We sure have.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so now we really are done. There's not any more mystery now. You want to check one more time on your list? Is there any more names that could be coming up there?
I think we said everybody.
All right.
We'll see.
Then I will say Taylor Rockwell. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Before we do the Jamaica review, there's also Groups E and F of the Women's World Cup. Our previews will be published on Wednesday afternoon/evening. I hope you'll listen to them. Hope you listen to A, B, C and D as well. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.